All right, here we are with Dot Maver, and this is September 22nd, and we are absolutely thrilled that we got a little slice of Dot's very busy life for us tonight. So I, to be very honest, I've only met Dot a few times online. I have heard about her and I read about her. And she is a major part of Peace Week that we have been experiencing. I don't know if any of you have been able to jump into any of the fantastic talks and plenaries and the concert was amazing. But Dot is a big part of that. And rather than go into a long thing about her, I'm going to basically ask her questions and she will fill in the blanks. So thank you, Dot, so much for coming and meeting our tribe. And as I said, we will be recording this and sending this out to everybody who can't make it tonight. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Hope. It's a great joy to be here with everyone.
So why don't we start at the beginning? Tell us
Okay.
how you got attracted to this theme. What in your life inspired that?
The theme of peace.
The theme of peace.
Hmm. Okay. Wow, that's a big question. So, yeah, so as a child, I was always interested in what was beyond me, although I couldn't articulate it at the time. And I had an experience around the age of 10 that really spoke to me about uh, I was part of everything, something much bigger than myself. And then early on, I was introduced to the ageless wisdom, first through Edgar Cayce, then Helena Blavatsky, then the Roerich, Agni Yoga, and then the blue books, as they call them, and it just on, right? So, and I also coached softball for many, many years. I love softball and played softball for many years. And I discovered coaching softball. I taught high school and university also, but that we were really one family. Like every position on the field had its own responsibility, and yet nobody could play the game by themselves. So that seems obvious. But as that developed, I developed a shared responsibility, shared leadership model through athletics that has served to this day. And I don't know exactly, Hope, how people started labeling all that peace for me, but I started to get invited into various things that had to do with peace education, with the United Nations, thanks to Nina Meyerhoff, and Global Alliance for Transforming Education, and a number of things that led to where I am today. But I would say because the foundation is the ageless wisdom and my great desire in my heart to help make violence history.
Wow, that is so fascinating. It's I love what you say about softball and well, team sports in general or
Yeah,
team work in general
yeah.
requires our rough edges to get rubbed away, right?
It does. It does. And what happened for me, I was about as competitive as they come, and I had a very strong will as a young person. I would say I still have a strong will, but I don't apply it in the same way. And but what happened is I started to realize the real meaning of competition. It underlies the Olympics, right? Competere, petition with. And we petition with one another to rise together, like to bring out one another's best. So I started talking about, and particularly to other coaches, about cooperative competition, which ultimately did me in because I wasn't the coach who then could coach to win. I would have to say success is not spelled WIN. But nonetheless, yes, that was the path through for me.
That's so fascinating. I love the way you wrote down competition.
Yeah.
And usually one would think if we're being competitive, are we being peaceful? Not really. I mean, it doesn't feel like it goes together, but how you've explained it
It does.
actually does.
Yeah. Yeah,
That,
because we really are wired to love and be good
Yeah.
and bring out the best in one another. And for me, education, educare, I mean, to draw forth or lead out, it really isn't about unzip, pour in. It's about drawing forth the wisdom that's already within us, right? And
Yeah.
our value and what our unique contribution is in the world. So,
Yes. Yes. I taught theater for many years,
mm.
and it's a team sport too,
Yeah.
you know. And the what you're saying, I really relate to, because each child, each student had their own unique
Mm,
thing to bring, and encouraging them to let that out, bring it to the light, you
yeah.
know. That's very cool. So tell me about, then you started to be invited into these peace events. How did you wind your way through them? How did you choose that to do that? And I mean, what was attracting you?
Oh, always and ever the ageless wisdom. The big question, why am I here? Who am I? I used to say to the youth I would speak with sometimes if I was asked to speak in like an inspirational way, what is the point of getting up every morning? And if we can't answer that, if we can't find that in our heart, that we really have a passion about living, and we understand that we're more than this personality and this vehicle of physical, emotional, mental, then we could get ourselves in trouble. So that's what really spoke to me as well. Hope and getting caught when I was in my early 40s, I decided I'm just going to say yes so big that I never have to say no, so that the law of attraction and repulse gets activated. And then people aren't going to invite me to things that I'm not. And pretty much that has worked over the years. I have to say this week, not that I'm not part of everything, but the schedule is unforgiving this week.
Yeah. Dot was just sharing with me that she's basically 7 to 11 every day,
Yeah,
crack of dawn to nighttime.
it's good.
Um, so tell me how this piecework started to flow out. What was the first one or two groups that you got involved with, and how did that flower? And because you've done international work now, so how did that process happen?
Well, I think probably pretty much the same for any of us as we step into a field, so to speak. We find our heart is called in certain directions. And surprisingly to me, I was never in politics, or although people used to call me a spiritual politician, a spiritual diplomat, but
Oh, I
but
like that.
I was never into politics per se. And then, and so I helped found the Seven Ray Institute, which is based on very much on the ageless wisdom. And then the Institute for Visionary Leadership out in Minnesota. And we came to Vermont and started a spiritual center in Northfield, Vermont. And I've been in the Northeast ever since, but grew up in Jersey. So that's why my throat center is so active, I think. But anyway, and then so while in Vermont, I took kind of a deep dive into transformational kinesiology and offering like a spiritual coaching kind of thing. And we had a children's program. And a friend of mine, as I said, Nina Meyerhoff, both of us, she was running Heart's Bend Camp in Vermont at the time, in southern Vermont, and we just kept talking about what the real need was for our interests in terms of education and really peace, living in right relationship with self, others, and all of life. Because for me, peace isn't the goal, it's the natural outcome.
Yeah.
When we get it, that peace is an inside job, and I have to be the demonstration model. Like, how I used to say when we were all campaigning for a Department of Peace in the United States. And I used to say all the time, if we can't demonstrate peace in our own lives and in relationship with one another, how dare we call for a Department of Peace at the governing level? What are they going to govern? So it's like we are, we are the governance. So anyways, I started to say yes to a number of things like the UN work for peace, that original curriculum out of Costa Rica for peace education, and so many other things just started to fall into place. And then when 9/11 happened, that was amazing. And Nina was at the UN. Do you know that 9/11 was the International Day of Peace that year? It was the next year that it began to be the 21st of September every year, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that year it was 9/11, and it's the only year that the bell didn't ring because they had to evacuate at 5 of 9, and usually the bell rings at 9 a.m. New York time, the peace bell. So Nina was there that year, and instead of going back to Vermont, she headed south to what is now Ground Zero, and she demanded a place for the children who were being traumatized and displaced, etc. And for 6 months, she stayed there, and it was amazing. FAO Schwartz got involved, the Clintons, the Giulianis, Michael Jackson, just Raffi, everybody got involved. When she came back, she ultimately got the National Service Award from President George Bush at the time. But when she came back to Vermont, the two of us got together and we went into meditation. And when we came out, we both said almost identically, simultaneously, we have to do something for the children. And then Nina says, for all the children. I said, yes, for all the children. So we started a series of Share the Spirit of Peace summits. And that, Hope, is when I took a really deep dive into peace itself. And of course, the spirit of peace is something for me that I'm familiar with actually as an entity, not as just a good idea or something that we pray for, but an entity. And we have to invoke the spirit of peace. We have to demand the spirit of peace presence, and it will stimulate humanity to goodwill and right relationship, but it's going to be unfamiliar. And the more I got familiar with that, right, and that it would be unfamiliar, the more I chose to say yes to things that were incredibly challenging at times, but spoke to all the time living in right relationship across the board and on all levels, whether it be in athletics, in education, in religion, in politics. I mean, when Dennis Kucinich asked me to be national campaign manager for his presidential run in 2004, I was like, wow, but you know how you get like the indication? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, because first he said to me, I had been his personal assistant for about 6 weeks because I really liked him, his authenticity, his honesty. And so, I'm sitting with him in the back of a car after a big meeting in New Hampshire, and his security guy's in the front and with the driver, and he turns to me and says, Dot, you can't travel with me. You have to move to New Hampshire and run my campaign. I go, Dennis, that would be the biggest mistake of your political career. I know nothing about politics. So then he thinks for a minute and he goes, well then, Dot, you have to move to Cleveland and run my national campaign. And I get this thing, and I'm like, seriously? And I go, okay, that I can do. And there's the security guy in the front seat goes, what? I said, look, I can coach 50 softball teams, but I don't know enough. And I can get people in who know about politics, but I don't know enough about politics to do the other. It was such a funny moment. And so that took me in another deep dive. That was the most intense year and a half of this incarnation to date. And at the end of that run, we took Dennis all the way to the Democratic Convention, and we ran our own grassroots convention around the convention in Boston that year. We rented out the university there. We had over 1,000 people come in from all over the country. It was amazing. And had speakers, like Howard Dean and Bernie Sanders and Tom Hayden of the Chicago 8. So I took a PhD course basically in politics. But having said that, what I realized, Hope, is that we can, even through politics, which is a nasty business at times, we can live in right relationship. And so we need to activate our inner will, our social will, and that will push the political will. It's not going to work the other way around.
Yeah.
So anyway, I could go on, but that's what happened. And then one thing after another just kept kind of falling into place. So
Wow, I didn't know that bit about Dennis Kucinich. That's an amazing story.
yeah, it's
Wow.
fun.
Oh my God.
I don't know that I've ever told that story publicly, but there it is.
That's a great story. And the fact that you managed to keep it together in that environment is
Well,
something.
at the end of that time, as the campaign uh, dissolved itself, right? We had a number of interns. We rented a house in Cleveland and brought in a lot of young people, and I would meet with them once a week. It was a beautiful experience, as intense as it was, and and I think we made history. I mean, we had over 70 delegates at the convention who basically, I said, vote your conscience. So Dennis Kucinich got 41 votes,
Wow.
delegate votes for
Wow.
president that year. So anyway, but these interns afterwards, many of them continued in politics, and I got so many phone calls afterwards from some of them who would say, Dot, I didn't realize that the way you were running the campaign was so different than the way some campaigns are run. Like, well, you know what's possible, so step up, so yeah, there's a better world coming.
I just can't even tell you how refreshing it is to even hear that you were able to do it. I mean,
Hmm.
because we just, it's a dirty business, and that you were able to make it rise. Of course, you had a good guy,
Oh, yes.
at the forefront, but that you could really raise the bar for campaigning is remarkable, really remarkable.
Yeah.
Um, so where are you now? Catch us up with where you are at this point.
So I term myself a peace builder and educator, and my job is to inspire cooperation on behalf of the common good. So the ride from that, from the Share the Spirit of Peace summits, we ended up doing them all over the world: Geneva, Tokyo, Darjeeling, South Africa, just London, New York at the UN, a Youth Share the Spirit of Peace summit. Because in Vermont, we had Bernie Sanders and Dennis and the mayor of Burlington at the time, and folks came up from the UN. It was a huge, packed house, largest peace summit at the University of Vermont.
Wow.
So doing all of that, I also really loved the National Peace Academy part of Dennis's Department of Peace. So helped found the National Peace Academy USA, which is still alive and well. We've hosted a number of events during Peace Week, and we're a thought partner with lots of groups who are thinking through what it takes to make this big shift we're making, right? We can't keep doing business as usual, as we know, and really it requires a shift in our worldview.
Yes.
And that, as we all know, and hope you know this well, you talk about it, it's to shift our worldview, I have to be the change. And once that happens, I can no longer acquiesce to a compromise with violence or injustice.
Mhm,
It's a huge shift that we are talking about on the planet.
mhm.
So, yeah, it will brook no compromise there. And so, how do we do that from a place of love? How do we do that from a place of right relationship?
Yeah.
How do we do that from a non critical, non judgmental place where we acknowledge what it is that's not working because the whole place is on fire? And after acknowledging that, not identifying, not pushing against it, not trying to fix the caterpillar, actually acknowledging the butterfly whose wings are still drying and say, oh, well, we're not exactly sure. However, we know what the principles and the values, etc., are, so let's apply that. So, the National Peace Academy, and then following that, I was invited by the Phoenix family, Hart Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, to help found. I was the founding executive director of the River Phoenix Center for Peacebuilding in Gainesville, Florida.
Mm.
And I'm still on the board and the board of directors. And so we began to put all that together in 2011, actually. And to our surprise, and here we go again with my story, just like, oh my goodness, the first door to open wide was the criminal justice system. Who would have
Ah,
guessed? Who would have guessed? And so, with that, we are now doing a lot of work with restorative justice and, of course, everything peace. But it's been an amazing journey, and I'm just so grateful. So every morning I say, "Bless me into usefulness, lest I pass thy labor," and every day I'm ready to be surprised.
I know about the surprise part. Because you're right. When we're truly in service, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Yeah, it's amazing.
How do you, what kind of practices or what kind of methods do you use for
Mm.
people to click in? Well, first of all, click into some peaceful state within themselves, but also this fundamental shift that you're talking about. I mean, this is what we're all about here is evolution and evolving into a higher, state of consciousness that is, and pretty different, very different from the 3D model that we all live in. So we have this thing called the infinity wave that came to me in a series of visions, and that is a tool that we use to actually restore peace very quickly within the being, but also create a peaceful environment.
Mm.
It's a like a quantum energy, and can be called upon. Just like you're saying, peace is an entity, and I love that you said that, because I've worked with the entity of hope, actually.
Mhm.
Not to make a pun on my name, but um, I've gone down the rabbit hole with it, because it can, for some, feel like it's too flimsy, like it's just a little, I hope something will happen. No, it's a force, much like you're describing peace as an entity. It's a force that can be incredibly powerful,
Mm.
and especially if we open to it. So I'm kind of blabbing here, but getting back to what tools you use, or anything you can share with us about how to restore that sense of peace within.
Mm. Yeah, I'd love to hear from others in the room then too, Hope. If we do that, we can all talk, say however we do that. Yeah, it doesn't matter what I'm doing or where I am. There is always time upon awakening to take at least a few minutes to connect inwardly, upwardly, because we're living on the cross all the time, right? And if we just focus on this manifest world, that's where we identify then, oh my goodness, the anxiety, the stress, the everything. So it really has to do, for me, with my point of identification. And that point of identification is with spirit.
Mhm.
So living within that to the best of my ability, I used to say you have to plug in every day, like the Energizer Bunny has to plug in every day to keep going. And now it so becomes a way of life that you're in it all the time, and still I choose to sit every morning for some period of time. So there's that, and then there is breathing. The breath for me is really the key in my own practice. And I find that I simply now at this point have to take that deep breath, which connects me with the one breath, right? So I'm mindful then that my heart is beating with the one heart. So the way I look at it is and my understanding of it and my experience of it is that there is the manifest world, and then of course there's the subtle world, right? And most of us are aware of that. And the Global Silent Minute, I'm a co-founder of Global Silent Minute, and globalsilentminute.org if you want to check that out. Every day we take a minute of silence at 9 p.m. GMT for global cooperation, peace, and freedom. And we know by calling on those on the other side of the veil, those in the subtle world, they cannot impose their will on us. But when invited, there is an army of goodwill wanting to assist out here. So we offer that invitation. But I will say that there is a third world that I'm going to call the fiery world. And we are actually cosmic beings, right? Having an experience here on this beautiful planet we all call home. So we're spiritual beings having a human experience. When that shift, that 180 happens for any of us, then we're in touch with the full plethora of life itself. So the principle of freedom is huge on this planet. It's said that the planet Sirius, the principle of freedom is alive and well there, but not a freedom that we yet quite understand. But it's at the heart of every atom.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Hmm.
so our DNA is that.
Yeah.
So for us to wake up to that by placing our point of identification with spirit instead of form, that for me is part of the key. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Beautifully, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just let's take a moment here and ask other people if what do you do to restore peace within yourself? Daily, several times a day? Anybody care to share? Come on,
For
y'all.
me,
Go
for
ahead,
me,
Julie.
it's first thing in the morning. It's like that's the foundation. It's just like before you set about anything else. That's where it comes in. It sets the day really, and I need it to set the day. And my intention is that it does that because I find remembering during the day is the difficulty for me. So, at moments when I need to do that breath or to call in help or to remember who I am, often, I'm not remembering. So it's just like constantly setting that intention. I kind of hope that I'm in the flow and, going in the right direction. Yeah. And I just wanted to ask Dot, you said that we're fiery, and then you talked about freedom. So I wondered if at some point you'd expand on the if that's the correlation is the freedom and the fire, or where the fieriness is in relation to peace.
Okay.
Before we do that, is there anybody else who wanted to chime in about what they do to bring a peaceful disposition? No? Okay. So yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. Thank you, Fiona. Talk about the fiery world.
Yeah. So, well, I would like to, in response to Fiona, say, you make me mindful of mindfulness, right? And it really is a mindfulness practice that we're talking about, of true presencing, so that we are conscious and aware in virtually every moment. This moment, and now I'm aware in this moment, and that means we fully presence non-judgmentally.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the key, because the minute we go to judging self or others, we do a bit of a disconnect from staying conscious in the flow. It's like how I define health, a free flow of spirit through form. And we get these disruptions when all of a sudden something happens and we go to a fear-based reaction instead of responding from a place of, wow, I wonder what that is. It could be,
Yes.
an opening happening. It could be an intuition dropping in. It could be any number of things.
Yes, that's so
Chakra
good.
spinning. So,
Presence
yeah,
oneself non-judgmentally. That's beautiful, because
yeah.
if we're judgmental, then we're not open to whatever comes. We lose the opportunity.
Exactly. We cut ourselves off. Yeah, because it's like separation is the only true sin, right? I always think of archery, where the center, hitting the center point is called a sin, right? And so if we don't do that, yeah. So anyway,
Oh,
but to
beautiful.
talk about the fiery world, for me, it's all about the heart. It's said that our hearts are on loan to us in an incarnation, and that the journey is to realize that the heart it needs, in a way, to be beating with the one heart, and that would be the cosmic heart, right? The universal heart. And when we realize that we actually are living in these bodies with a fiery heart, that's how we connect. And that's why you'll hear me often say we unite our fiery hearts across distance, because our hearts, when they beat in rhythm with the one heart, that's where everything resides in terms of consciousness and that great flow and for myself, I'll say a deeper acceptance of absolutely everything, and the realization that I may abhor a behavior, but that is not who that person is or what that person is. And that perhaps is the most challenging thing, I think, for us to step away from judging anyone about anything. And at the same time, recognizing that when it's intentional, that's if you put the word live up to a mirror, so yeah, then that is not good. But for the most part, it's, no one really wants to. I used to always say in softball, look, nobody gets up to strike out. So, and it happens. So it's okay.
Exactly. You're making me remember, I went to Findhorn when I was 21, and one of the things that they taught us there, speaking of mindfulness and kind of maintaining a peaceful state and flow state, is they taught us this thing called attunement, which nowadays, you've heard, but I'd never heard it before back then. This was in 1976. And what it was basically coming into one with whatever instrument we were working with. So it was on our work duty. So, if we were cutting carrots, or if we were digging in the garden, or cleaning a toilet, you would attune with your instrument,
Hmm.
and you would recognize that there actually is no difference between you and it. And you become one with it. And then we do it with our work crew. And what would happen was that the work went easily, and you didn't catch yourself, you didn't
Yeah.
everything went easily and well and happily.
Mm.
And it was so setting up any kind of endeavor, like now, if I'm going to try to paint the house, or if I'm going to, I try to remember to do that kind of attunement, um, because then you remember that you actually are one with the whole thing. It's not just your instrument, but brings you into that state, that awareness.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, you're right now bringing to mind, a friend of mine used to say that realization is the most esoteric word in the English language. And the realization that changed my life at the age of 13, we were playing ball in the side yard, and my brother and I were very close and just 2 years apart almost to the day. And he died very young, actually. Um, But at that time, I was, I think, maybe 12 and he was 10, or I was 13 and he was 11. So, and something happened, and I picked up the bat and I'm chasing him around the house. And he was a fine athlete, much faster than me, but he tripped and fell. And I jumped on him. He was on his back on the grass. I will never forget the moment. And I was going to hurt him. And in that moment, I looked into his eyes and I completely, what's the word, metamorphized? Like I saw myself. I knew in that moment to my core that I was him and he was me.
Mm.
Complete, oh, and my will could spark into anger as a child, right up to that moment, actually. And I dropped the bat, started sobbing. Something was happening and I couldn't figure it out. It would take me probably another almost 10 years to be able to articulate what had happened, but it set a path for me as well. I went behind the bush around the back of the house and just sat there forever. And I made a commitment that I would help create a world where no one would ever get angry like that. I would not never ever get angry like that again, but I didn't want to repress those strong feelings. I wanted to be able to work with that strength in a positive way. And that's really what set me on the path.
I should say so. What an amazing story.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's coming into that realization of the hugeness of, it's not just your will, right? You were caught up in
Oh,
something, right? You
oh
were
my
caught up
God.
in something much bigger than you.
Yeah, like a white rage. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I love about the fact that you even told us that story is, when we have these moments of recognizing our flawed humanity, our vulnerability to things like that, also kind of an entity, um, it helps us to have compassion for others who
Oh,
get caught up in it and
yeah.
create acts that they can't stop like you
Yeah,
did.
and then can't undo. When with the River Phoenix Center, we'd go into the detention centers, and you want to tell a story like that because I would say, look, if it weren't for that moment of recognition and realization, and then my response to that rather than reaction to that, thank you. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here in this room with all of you. I would have been a very different life path.
Mhm.
And so to stay present and yeah, that our compassion meter goes like off the charts. And that's part of how we attend then in life.
Mhm.
Instead of removing ourselves from any situation or uh, trying to be more perfect than we are, or, I mean, any of the things that we all do, it's all okay. It's all okay. I always say we just need to love more.
Exactly. Pour on the love. Well, tell me, because I wanted to keep mindful of the time. Okay, we're okay.
Yeah, we're
Um, what gives you hope now?
yeah. Well, hope for me is like faith, the evidence of things unseen and the substance of things to come. I am an unwavering and unapologetic optimist. And I have a Jupiter in Aries singleton in the second house of my chart that is trine the midheaven in Sag. So I kind of can't help it for those who know astrology. But beyond that, for me, hope is not something that where I'm wishing for something to happen. It's complete trust in a divine plan,
Mhm.
complete faith that what is happening will ultimately, and even in this moment, even though I may not be able to see it clearly yet, but certainly ultimately will prove itself. And the example that I use all the time is in the Western world, the Dark Ages. And who could know at a moment when, oh my goodness, terrible things were happening and books were being burned and people were being violated. And, oh my goodness, that humanity at that time was one, maybe two steps away from a renaissance unlike anything that we had known. And I submit that's where we are right now as we make this transition from Pisces to Aquarius. And we are at the highest moment in the whole evolutionary journey, right? And so our frequency has to be upgraded. Well, that's not an easy thing. It's a pretty heavy lift for all, and nobody's exempt. So, and I submit that we are one or two steps away. In fact, I think we already have a foot in it, that what I'll call the next renaissance. And that's where we need to be putting our attention, our time, our energy. That's what we need to invest in, whatever it is, our thought. So all the self-help, all the work that we all do to be better people ourselves, what's the point? Except that we are part of what is emerging in terms of this divine grace on the planet that for me is not religiously based. It's a fact. It's it's like that's what's going on.
Mhm. That's very well said. And one of the things I love that Peace Week has interwoven with Shelley and Jan's
Mm,
eco-governance.
yeah.
And because they, to my mind, have crafted something tangible that we
Yes.
can envision, right? We can really kind of pull that reality towards us.
Yes.
Um, and I just love that it's really intertwined with this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, this whole systems approach to whole systems healing. And that's what we were saying earlier, right? This shift in worldview that is necessary because we don't get there from within the system that is breaking down.
Right.
It's like the caterpillar doesn't get to the butterfly by remaining the caterpillar. It's just that's the best example we have on the planet. And humanity is going through a chrysalis experience.
Yes.
So
Yes. I
it's,
totally agree.
yeah.
And we've been on quite a journey in the last few years. We've been basically being tutored by different universal groups that come in that on the Monday nights when I do meditations. We had this really lovely group called the Ahmad, and they were just up tuning us, bringing us more light, a lot of light, and giving us these journeys to experience the new earth.
Mm,
And there was one in particular that was just mind blowing. I mean, and it was helpful to me because I could go, okay, now when I think of where I want us to go, I go right to that.
hmm
It was so palpable. And it was us at a higher level, able to be in communication with the environment, full
Beautiful,
communication with the environment.
beautiful.
And so, I mean, it was incredible. And
Well, I think
and
that's where we're headed. That is
I
what,
think so too.
look at Danalia's work with the listening field and the
Right,
nature elders. We are really, and Findhorn from what seems like way back then, but of course it's a blink of an eye, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
And magic did happen there. I mean, like that
Mm,
place was unbelievable.
yeah.
So, and that was an experiment in living this mindful, peaceful,
Yes.
as you've been describing, the this whole just way of being. And you're accountable when you're in a group,
Yeah.
right? You can't it's the blessing and the curse of being in a group because you can't really wiggle away.
No, well, that's the thing, right? And I say that all the time too. I will hold myself accountable, and we are all held accountable
Yeah.
for our thoughts, for our feelings, for our behavior. And that's once we get that, You know, that also is a game changer. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And I just feel like there have been so many experiments, communes and whatever over the years. And I mean, going back hundreds of years, right? Thousands of years, actually. But I feel like we're so close to maybe getting it right and
Yeah.
getting in with one that we can actually see it through. Let me ask you a question, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody to ask a question. So now's the time to start thinking about your question. Who are your peace heroes?
Ooh, who are my peace heroes? Wow. Some of the names, if I were to name them, you wouldn't recognize at all. But the one that you would recognize is Mother Teresa. She always said, from the first time I knew of her, I would always say at rallies, I didn't go to anti-war rallies, I would go to peace rallies, and I would say, I stand with Mother Teresa. She says, we have to go for what we want, not fight against what we don't want. And it took me a while to realize, though, that everything is needed. It's all needed. So, like if I wanted to build something on the corner up here, if there was drug trafficking, let's say, you have to clean it out and knock that building down, name it, in order to build the next thing that's going to be the thing that works for the whole community. So everything has a role. But that's who I would name as a peace hero. And of course, once I got deeply into the field, I mean, Martin Luther King, a total inspiration for me. But so many, right now, I would name Kekashan Basu, who is in her 20s and at the age of 12 founded the Green Hope Foundation. You know, there are so many youth on the planet right now, and we're not hearing about all of them yet. But it's, as you just said, Hope, it's all of a sudden it's all going to become visible, and we're going to be like, oh, it's like magic art. You know, that magic art that you look at it and all of a sudden you're in it, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize there was such depth to this piece of art. Well, I think that's what we're living in right now. So
Well said.
I'd love to hear from others who your heroes are also, or sheroes.
Yeah, speak up now. Questions or heroes or sheroes or whoever.
Does it have to be that subject?
No, go ahead, Kathy.
No.
Dot, I wanted to say to you that I met you through the Global Coherence Pulse, these things they've been having in the Peace
That's why you
Unit.
look familiar.
And you and Shelley and Teresa have such a presence. I mean, and learning tonight that you were so competitive, so to speak, and strong. And because whenever I see you on these programs or these sessions this week, you appear so peaceful and so balanced. And, you know, one of the things I might ask is that years ago, because of my health condition, I was trying a PEMF mat. So I'd be laying on the floor, and I had the graceful passages of Gary Mulkin.
Nice.
And I always listened to those as I was doing my health thing. I almost always fell asleep. But what was so interesting is during that music, I was always able, this was during the Trump period, to visualize Washington, D.C. and the Congress and all the rest of it. And I could visualize divine grace pouring out of the heavens over the government and over DC. And it was really about the only time, though, that I could remain neutral. I mean, I used to tell people, wow, you know, I'm really neutral about Trump when I do this. I know he's got a background. He is hurting tremendously. Like you're saying, when you looked at your brother, you saw that. And I totally understand that. But then to live that, like when I make calls actively for when the government, I'm active, it's really difficult not to get a little bit strong when I'm talking to the people, because there seems to be a lack of action in many places. And so how do you gather that that balance and fortitude and perseverance to keep on and keep on, because some days I just can't call. I'm just
Yeah, I can
not
understand.
able to overlook
Yeah.
the immensity of what we need to do.
Wow.
Yeah, that is a really fair question that you're asking. And I will say the initial answer I'll give is that I take a really long view. Because if I thought for 1 second that I have to fix it and that things have to change right now, oh man, I would faint.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and bless you for making the calls and doing what you're doing. One of the things that helps me is I look at everyone and I say, wow, everybody has their dharma, right? Everybody has karma, but everybody has dharma, whatever the actual purpose is for us, right? And the path. And what a dharma for this past president of the United States, and what has been exposed as a result. So I tend
That's
not to
right.
take it. Yeah, I'm sorry, Leonore. Yes.
No, I was just agreeing and I said, yes, that's right. It's so
Yeah.
wise what you're saying. Please speak more.
Yeah, so I find that very powerful because I think that many, we all know of reincarnation and that we run lifetimes often in cycles. And many of the leaders from way back at a time that we name Atlantis, when humanity pretty much did itself in because it headed so materialistically and utilizing all this knowledge about crystals and how to fly and this and that in ways that were not the part of wisdom, right? It maintained this manifest world level. Many of those leaders are back in power right now. And so it's up to us, those of us who have some awareness of this, and Kathy, as you're saying, the challenge to maintain our poise and our presence without going critical, without going judgmental, but really building the fire. There's a raging fire over here. I don't want to throw another log on that fire. I'm going to throw logs on this fire that barely has enough kindling to have a little flame right now. And that is the fire of the new era, the fiery heart, the fire of the depth of understanding of a life of right relationship because we recognize spirit. And I could talk for a week about that, but that for me, Kathy, in answer to your question too, that's where I live and move and have my being. And if I find myself thinking about something after it happens more than normal, I know that I have a little work to do, a little
Yeah, right.
little
Right.
emotional whatever might have crept into the mix. And so I take that upon myself. It's never about other, ever.
Right.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. Wow. Listen, I want to be mindful of your time,
right.
and
Thank
it is 8:25.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm offering a global silent minute in the event tonight that actually started at 7:30, and it goes on till about 9:30. 22 prayers from women around the world. So we do that once a month on the 22nd. Chief Phil Lane Jr. and many of the indigenous elders, the women, gather all of us, and I always offer the global silent.
How do you connect with that?
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. So hope it's in peaceweek.org.
Oh,
And,
it is?
yep. And I'll put in the chat. I don't know how late you meet tonight, but there it is in the chat.
Great.
Yeah. And so it's in that room usually every month on the 22nd, usually at either 12 noon or 7 p.m. And there's always a Facebook Live event that shows up on Four Worlds International. So yeah, but I could
you.
make sure, hope that we stay in touch and you get it. Yes, it's been a delight. The mother of the world. Karen. Yeah, there she is. Oh boy.
If you have a minute, why I randomly just got this in the mail?
Yeah.
Is there a reason?
You randomly got it in the mail? From
From
whom?
a friend. I got this just recently from a friend in the mail, and then I don't know anything about it.
So the Mother of the World, who you see over my shoulder,
Yeah.
is a painting by Nicholas Roerich. That painting, as are many of his paintings, is imbued with psychic energy and the energy of Agni Yoga, the yoga of fire, to help heal. So the Mother of the World, you see that her veil is down. She dropped her veil all those many, many, many moons ago because it was too painful for her to watch her children being violent with one another and living in such a destructive kind of way. So she withdrew. And she is now coming forth again. And her healing balm is blessing all of us right now. And she is lifting her veil. And that's the other way that I know that we are moving in the direction and are really immersed in peace, in actually fulfilling our destiny, right? Peace on earth. So thank you for presencing the great mother there.
Got it in the mail.
That's
Gotta say,
That's beautiful. That's amazing. That's yeah.
I gotta say, it's like, whoa. So
Yeah, thank you for
I'll
that.
look further because I don't know.
Yeah, Nicholas Roerich, and if you look at agniyoga.org, I'll put that in the chat too. Yeah, Agni.
Oh, this was very powerful evening
Oh,
together. I am myself a great follower of Nicholas Roerich, and I study his paintings, and I painted a door recently, a mural for a local arts festival. And I was completely there in the sky landscapes with Nicholas Roerich. And my friend then emailed me and he said, oh, it looks like your mural, you were somewhere, it was inspired by Nicholas Roerich. I said, yes, and I would want to paint more.
that's beautiful. That you'll notice here, a friend in Italy at the Community of Living Ethics. There's the banner of peace. She painted this for me.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
I created rubber stamps, and I use it in my artwork often.
Mhm.
Peace sign, and people never know what it is, and I want to promote it big time.
Yeah,
because
that's
it's so needed. It's so much more beautiful than the other peace sign.
wow. Yes,
I
yes.
would love to connect with you. That's all I can say. This is very important, what I heard today.
Okay, there you go. my email. So I am going to go now. So if Sister Joan calls on me after 8:30, which is ideal, I'm actually in the room. So blessings and love. Yeah, so much love.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dot.
you.
The pleasure.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you, Hope, for the invitation and for persevering. All right.
Thank you, Dot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasn't she amazing?
Ooh, wow.
Wow. Is right.
Wow. This will take a while, Hope, to I don't even want to say digest, just to grok.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you
Th-
very,
thank
very much for introducing us to her.
Yeah. I'm very happy that it all worked out.
I didn't even know her until the Unity Week, the Peace Week this week. And I've just been fascinated by, what she has to say, like your guest says. It's just
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so charged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you get there in 1 hour is like reading volumes of other people who shall not be named.
Lest we judge them.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that this must have been a quote from the Bible, with that saying, that mantra, or the biblical mantra she uses every morning, bless me. I'm very curious about the verbatim sentence.
Well, I'll post the replay in Sunday's
Okay.
newsletter.
Mhm. I will stop it and go and stop and go and take notes.
Yeah. It's wow. I hope a lot of people get to see this because
Uh-huh.
I'm still recording. Darn.
And Hope, did you, she said